Hello viewers, welcome to Disease Reversal and Mitigation Studio. Today I want us to interrogate a very important question about the true cause and cure for cancer. It has taken more than 80 years and we are yet to find the true cure for cancer. And by the way, we do not know the true cause of cancer. Could be the reason why the cure is yet to be found. Now, what are the facts that we have concerning the disease called cancer? We know for sure that cancer is a lifestyle disease that is developed inside our bodies when we have created conducive environment by injuring our own cells and therefore leading to the development of cancer disease. But one thing that is a fiction is cancer does not come as a result of genetic mutation. That one we do not want to believe because cancers develop later in life. So this means we have certain characteristics we have acquired or offenders that have caused our cells to get damaged. Now, we can agree with science that cancer comes as a result of damage to cells. But that damage to cells will lead to mutation. But mutation does not cause rapid growth of cells or rapid cell division. The reason is, for those who believe in nature and who believe that God created all the organisms, you know that in any case an organism has a mutation, that means it is a disease. Mutation means the cells of the organisms have become sick. So that will not lead to further reproduction. But those who believe in evolution also believe in mutation. They believe that when organisms mutate, it's like they are gaining advantageous characteristics. But that is not so with creationism. If an organism mutates, then it loses the ability to reproduce. That is why if you cross a donkey and a horse, you get a mule that is unreproductive. So the same applies to humans who have mutated. They have become dwarves or giants or albinos. They are not as many as healthy humans because mutation denies them advantageous characteristics to be able to survive. And therefore, we do not expect a cell that has mutated to continue to reproduce, to generate other cells. Now, the genetic code in any organism in life is that it will cease to reproduce if the genetic code is severely affected to the extent that the original makeup is distorted. So that is the code of life. So I believe in creationism. I do not believe in evolutionism that says that cancer cells, if they have acquired a mutation, they become immortal. They continue to reproduce without ceasing. Now that one would remind me that when a human being sins, and to sin is to get a mutation, when a human being sins, he becomes an immortal sinner. Now, that kind of a gospel is being perpetuated by the evil one. And we cannot replicate it in a body that God created. That will not match. So we want to object by the position of conventional wisdom that genetic mutation leads to cancer. Does not lead to cancer because mutated cells have no ability to reproduce. They lose the life characteristics, they lose the ability to respire, to feed, and to perform the cellular functions that we know, such as growth, and therefore they cannot reproduce. And that is the truth. And we can confirm this by looking at other examples. For example, not all cancers are directly linked to mutation. For example, breast cancer does not come as a result of mutation. It comes as a result of hormonal imbalance and other environmental factors. That is why we also have inflammatory breast cancer. So that is not as a result of mutation. So to claim that cancer comes as a result of genetic mutation, you have to be consistent. It should apply to all cancers, including breast cancer, which is not genetic, and prostate cancer, which is also not genetic. And these cancers come at later stages in life. The cancer of the cervix does not come as a result of genetic mutation. It comes as a result of inflammation because of multiple sexual partners. That is, the cervix coming into contact with foreign antigens frequently. This challenges the immune system to cause what we call inflammation. And when this inflammation is chronic, there you go, we have cervical cancer. So, mutated cells, if they are to obey the law of life of all genuine and natural organisms, they ought to die if they change their genetic code. The other thing we need to know is that normal cells are the ones that replicate. They are the ones that fulfill that law of life to reproduce because they are normal. So what happens? Because we are able to regenerate more than 10 billions of cells on a daily basis to replace the old ones. Now, when the body loses the ability to get rid of cellular debris, if it loses that ability, because the body is supposed to recycle, the cells redeem the chemical components in the cells for further use by other cells. If it fails to do that, you know what it does? It isolates the mass of cells and encapsulates them in a site of the body where those cells were generated, and then it prevents those cells from interacting with the rest of the system. So that is what we call a tumor. So once the cells have been isolated and encapsulated, then what happens? The normal cells, that is the cells external to the mass or the tumor, they'll continue to mobilize resources to ensure that the cells that have been isolated, they'll never come into contact with healthy cells. But you know, there is something else we've not come to be taught. Whether science knows or doesn't know, I'm not sure. But did you know that cells that are sick and diseased, they actually attract fungus? Did you know that? If cells are diseased, they attract fungus. And one of those cells that are diseased is that tumor that has been enclosed. As long as the tumor is encapsulated, enclosed, it becomes or it remains a benign tumor. But if it attracts fungus, do you know what will happen? The fungus, in order to grow, will utilize the glucose from the cells that are dead. It will utilize the glutamine from the cells that are dead for its own growth. And now it will start forming roots we call hyphae, and those roots will start to spread into the tumor, and sometimes they can invaginate out of the capsule and strike or attach to the surrounding organs. Now, when those roots are attaching to the surrounding organs where we have healthy cells and healthy blood supply, Now the body continues to mobilize more cells, more nutrients, more oxygen to go to the area that is infested by the fungus so that it can encapsulate it further. And therefore the mass continues to increase because more blood supply, more cells will continue to isolate that area. So that is how a mass grows. And that is why the area at the center of that mass is white because it doesn't have blood supply. And that is the area where chemotherapy does not reach. So when you hear conventional wisdom saying that the mass is resistant to chemotherapy and therefore it needs to be debulked. To be debulked is to be removed. So somebody will receive what we call neoadjuvant chemotherapy to shrink that tumor and to disconnect the blood supply so that during operation we don't have a lot of bleeding. So that debulking surgery is meant to remove the tumor that is resistant to chemotherapy. But it's not that the tumor is resistant to chemotherapy. It's because the cells within are the core of the tumor. They are dead. So if they are dead, they have no blood supply. So there is no way for the chemotherapy to reach the dead core of the tumor. Now, let's get some other understanding concerning a term that is commonly used by the scientific establishment. And this is called metastasis. So we want to ask ourselves, does cancer metastasize? Okay, conventional wisdom says that cancer does metastasize. But the question we want to ask, why is it that people who have been found to have late-stage cancer sometimes have donated blood, and after screening of that blood, metastasized cells were not detected? And there is no genetic testing or any form of testing that has ever detected metastatic cells in blood. Why is it we are talking of the cancer metastasizing, but we are not able to capture those metastatic cells inside the blood of patients who have late-stage cancer? Now, the only explanation to that is that what metastasizes is not cancer cells. It could be something else too small, too tiny to be detected, or the conventional wisdom does not have modern modalities to detect them. And do you know what is that? Fungal spores. Because the original or the primary mass has fungus, fungal spores. It has fungus. And the fungus is producing hyphae. The hyphae are producing spores. And those spores are too small to be detected, and the current modalities, they are not designed to detect fungal spores. And when they lodge into a different site, they grow so fast. The only explanation we can give why the so-called metastatic cells grow fast when they go to another site is because they are fungal spores. Because once fungus relocates, it has tendency to grow so fast as long as it is provided with glutamine and glucose. And those are the main substrates for fungal growth. It is not usual, and we do not expect a metastatic cell which is mutated to grow when it goes to another tissue. Remember, a mutated cell should lose the ability to grow because it has lost what we call its genetic makeup. What causes it to grow is distorted, and therefore we do not expect a metastatic cell to continue to grow if it goes to another site. That is the work of fungal spores, and they grow so fast. Then did you ever know, or have you ever come across this information from conventional wisdom, that we have patients who have metastases in other organs, but the primary site cancer has never been detected. So we have subjects we call cancers of unknown primary origin. So the primary cancer has never been detected, yet they have metastasis. How can you explain that? Where is the metastasis coming from if we do not have the primary site cancer? Now, how do you explain that? The best explanation we can give is if these were fungal spores. Because, fungus cannot be detected at less than microscopic level. It starts humbly, and the current modalities have not been able to be designed as to detect fungal spores. That is the only explanation for this metastasis without a primary tumor. Wonderful. That is why we need to change the perspective of looking at cancer and start looking at fungus. And by the way, all conditions justify the presence of fungus, because fungus, if you read the book Education, page 189.5, fungus loves dead, decaying, and lifeless tissues. And that is why cells that are aging, cells that are sick, cellular debris that the body has not managed to eliminate successfully will attract fungus in the body. By the way, fungus is the only microorganism or agent that grows in the absence of life. So where it comes from, we do not know. But what we know is that even if an organism were to die and it was to enclosed or to be wrapped in polythene, it could still decompose whether you have locked out the fungus or not. Fungus just comes out by default with the absence of life. So that is the reason why fungal spores can be generated anywhere in the body, as long as we have dead and decomposed cells in the body, because fungus is a decomposer. By the way, the work of the fungus externally in causing decomposition of a body is the same function it does internally in case a cell or a tissue dies. That's wonderful. I hope that information is sinking and you're going to interrogate further. It's also important to know that we do not expect a metastatic cell, that is a cell that has lost communication with the rest of the body, to be accommodated in any other organ. What we see with tumors that are said to be metastatic growing comfortably in other organs. So once a metastatic cell, that is a cell that has lost a signal with the other cell, it has lost communication, we do not expect it to be integrated into a distant site. So what we expect from the other organs is that they should isolate it and encapsulate it and get rid of it, because that is waste. So how the metastatic cells are able to grow into other tissues and fit comfortably with them cannot be explained by conventional, or in the light of conventional wisdom, that these were originally body cells or cells belonging to us that have changed, okay, and they have metastasized. Now that one doesn't make sense. The only thing that makes sense, the only agent that can be integrated into other organs is fungal spores, because that one can grow, can dig into the tissues, and it can blend with the surrounding tissues. The way seed has ability to be insidious and then to grow and then blend the rest of the tissues. Until when it becomes a tumor, that is when you can know, now here we have a fungal growth, or when seed has produced fruits, that is when you can see, the seed that was hiding has now come out. So, very important to understand that. Okay. Now, it is also important to know that the most important component in a body that has cancer or a fungal tumor is your body's immunity. If you destroy your immunity, you are actually attracting more fungal cells. So if the standard of treatment, as we see in the cancer industry, is to destroy the immunity, because chemotherapy destroys the rapid regenerating cells, such as the cells of the immune system. So it will knock down the cells of the immune system, it will knock down the cells of the digestive system, the follicular cells for the growing of the hair, and that is why people lose hair, because these cells are fast dividing. So, if the standard of treatment is targeting the immune system, then that cannot be a cure. And that could be the reason why we've never found a cancer cure. The cause has not been known, the cure has not been known, and the standard of treatment today is actually knocking down the immunity. So that would mean it is attracting more fungus to grow. And by the way, when you kill the body cells, you are creating a breeding ground for fungus, because fungus loves dead and decaying cells. So that is the reason after you complete a cycle of chemo, you are likely to have another cancer being generated by the chemotherapy that you used. And that is why in the consent forms, for those who have ever signed the consent forms for chemotherapy to be initiated, the informed consent that you sign, it's supposed to stipulate all the side effects, all the outcomes and complications of that chemotherapy. And I remember in the original, some 5 years ago, the informed consent used to indicate that you can also get a secondary cancer from the chemotherapy, and you can also die from the chemotherapy. So it is likely after chemotherapy you get another cancer. Why? Because the chemotherapy is causing cellular debris to accumulate in the body because of the dead cells. And these dead cells attract fungus. So the truth of the matter is, fungus loves dead and decaying cells. And that is why whenever there is a dead cell or a diseased cell, you expect fungus to grow. This is a concept that conventional wisdom does not want to accept, because fungus is associated with sin, is a symbol of sin, and sin represents the devil. And the same way that fungus grows is the same way that sin grows. In the Bible, fungus is called leprosy. So did you ever imagine that we have leprosy today? Yes, in form of the cancerous tumors that grow in our bodies. In fact, leprosy is common. So the devil may have tried to mask leprosy by calling it by other names, but its characteristics never change. It is insidious, it is humble in its beginning, but when it grows, it becomes big. it becomes big. It's like the yeast that was put in three containers of flour, and then it continues to expand. So that is how fungus continues to grow. And once it becomes a big tumor, then we are able to see the fruits of sin or the leprosy. So however much the devil wants to mask leprosy by calling it by other names, the truth of the matter is the characteristics of leprosy, which comes in the form of cancers, chronic cancers, tuberculosis, leprosy in its own right, disease such as pneumonia, asthma. So despite the fact that it has been labeled by other names, but the characteristics of leprosy does not change. It resembles, it is similar to the way sin is insidious, and then when it starts to grow, it becomes big, and then the whole body becomes full of disease. So just like leprosy and fungus, the way it spreads into the entire body, so eventually cancer also spreads into the entire body. And that is a major characteristic of sin. Once sin starts in you and it does not get divine intervention, then it grows and the whole body becomes full of sin. In the same way, your full body can become full of cancer. Now let's meet in the next presentation. Thank you.